Hey, readers. Welcome back to another episode of Not Reading for Content. We are really excited to have you here with us today to talk about the Dallergut Dream Department Store. Today, we're going to be discussing chapters 1, 2, and 3. So we will get to that in just a minute. But before we do that, we do need to go through our bookish bite. And today, we're going to be talking about cozies. So, Leandra, my question for you is, what is the last book that you read that was cozy in tone?
Yes, and we do need to make that distinction. You and I were talking about this before the episode, how it does seem as though there's a difference between cozy subgenre and cozy tone. Not all books that fit one category are going to fit the other, and vice versa, which is quite interesting. And we can very much have a bigger discussion about that down the line. But the most recent tonally cozy book that I finished is going to have a wild name. It's going to be a really weird title, and you probably already know it, Danny. It is Kitty Cat Kill Sat by Argus. And this one was just such a fun space opera. As the name suggests, we have a cat main character. She is the main first person POV. She's hilarious, but she also is, gone through the ringer. There's some grief in there, some loneliness, and a lot of adventure. Like, she is put into dangerous situations. And I think those types of elements suggest that this isn't a cozy book. But whenever I was entering the novel or, leaving it, I felt like I was in such a good mood. I felt comforted. I felt like I, wasn't feeling too tense or as though my brain was really full. Like, it wasn't too complex of a narrative. So maybe that also helps with it being tonally cozy, but it was character driven as well, which I think leads to the idea of it feeling cozy because you're just with these characters for the characters themselves. So I can't recommend it enough. I gave it 5 stars. It was so fun, and definitely the furry friend that is our main character, Lily, that helps make it feel really cozy for me as a cat lover. How about you, Danny?
For me, this would have to be Throne of Jade. So this is the second book in the Tamriel series. The first book is called His Majesty's Dragon. And I think for me, a lot of the books that I read that I consider tonally cozy are historical fantasies. Not all of them, but a lot of them, especially the ones involving dragons. The Lady Trent series is a very cozy series to me. But I also consider like Emily Wilds, which is slightly historical. That's cozy to me. Tamriel, though, I think is especially so because of the conversations between the two characters. So our main characters are Tamriel, who's the dragon, and I cannot remember the captain's name, but there's a sea captain who becomes the dragon handler. And they are just so sweet to each other. Neither one of them really know what they're doing. Tamriel is a newborn hatchling at the very beginning of His Majesty's Dragon and is enlisted into the English army. And the captain of the ship is forced into being a dragon handler because of circumstances that you learn throughout the book. And he has never wanted this for himself. So both of them are learning together and they're trying to be so respectful of each other's space. And the captain has this he calls the dragon my dear, and he reads to him every night. Like, there's just like certain things throughout the story that are so sweet and just put a smile on my face. So I think with cozies, a lot of times what I really enjoy about it is the kind of nostalgic feel of them as well, which I do get with this, with the way that they treat one another, kind of the respect that they have for one another. It's really lovely.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up historical because I'm a huge fan of historical mystery, historical fantasy, even alternate history, which tends to lean sci-fi. Anything that's labeled like steampunk or gas lamp. The certain titles you mentioned also remind me that light academia tends to
Yeah.
lean cozy in tone. And so, yeah, I'm careful not to immediately call a historical mystery or a historical fantasy cozy in subgenre because I think we do need to keep them separate. But the things that you described, yeah, those feel cozy. They feel comforting and they slow us down potentially as well,
Mhm.
especially if it's a historical setting. It's not like we're going to have a car or a jet plane, distracting us in that way. So, yeah, really interesting. And speaking of cozy, obviously, the book that we're currently reading for this month is The Dallergut Dream Department Store by Miye Lee. And I am really enjoying this book, but I need to provide a summary first. So let's slow our roll a bit. In this narrative, we open up with Penny. She is preparing for a job interview with the Dallergut Dream Department Store. And it seems as though it's quite difficult to get a job interview for this specific department store. There's a lot of lore, rumors surrounding Dallergut, surrounding the department store in general, and Penny is just shocked that she even has this opportunity. So she's been studying like crazy. She has a furry friend, we'll call him, helping her out as well. And the interview goes great. Not at first. She feels as though she's probably bombing it, and then a few right answers proves to Dallergut himself that she's probably the right person for the job. And now we're just following Penny as she becomes ever more acquainted with the department store, with working with dreams, with working with people who are trying to find the perfect dream for themselves for that one night of sleep. And it's been interesting to get various cameos from the dreamer side of things, and time is just passing. It's been really lovely so far. And we're about to get into the nitty gritty. So if you haven't reached this point, if you haven't read the prologue in the first 3 chapters, we recommend that you pause here, because this is going to be a spoiler-filled episode per usual, and we'll see you when you come back. So to start off this discussion, Danny, I think we need to ask you first and foremost, how is your reread of this title going?
Oh, I love it. I'm so excited being back inside the world. It's been a lot of fun. And there are a lot of details that I don't remember. Like, obviously, I remembered Penny. I remember her meeting Dallergut and her the fuzzy friends that we have throughout this and their job responsibilities. All of those things were things that I remembered. What I didn't remember was the town or city, I guess, that she's living in. We don't get a lot of descriptors of that. I do think, for those of you interested, the second book that is coming out at the end of this month does deal with the city that she is living in. But we have a couple of the department stores that are surrounding the Dallergut Dream Department Store. One of them is the Leprechauns. I don't know what the second book goes into. I haven't looked into it all. I just know that it's called like the Dream Department District. And so I'm assuming it expands upon that. So we know that like the little leprechauns are next to the Dream Department Store. We also have her having like conversations of like the I can't remember his name, but the person on the 5th floor who she went to school with, and he was kind of like always a class
Motel
clown.
or something like that? Yeah.
Yeah. Like those little details I didn't remember. And so it was kind of fun to see it all kind of add together in this story. I also don't remember Penny being kind of as lost as she is. And we can talk about this, but she does kind of fumble her way through a lot of things. The interview is one of them. She spits out an answer and then reads Dallergut's expressions and is like, oh, I need to pivot. Like, this is what I should be saying instead. She does the same thing with, she's eventually given the responsibility of putting some things into the bank, putting Flutter into the bank for Dallergut, and ends up losing one of them or getting one of the little vials stolen. And so she definitely has these moments of being a little bit of a bumbling fool. And she's not dumb by any means, but she definitely is in over her head. And I didn't remember that aspect. And I really like it. I think it kind of endears me to her because she's someone who this is her dream job, but she's not perfect. It's not like she's, top of her class and knows every single thing about Dallergut. And I think that's why Dallergut likes her, is she is making mistakes. So anyway, that's a really long-winded way of saying that I'm really enjoying my reread. I'm happy to be back in the book.
Honestly, that is the best answer, though, because wouldn't it be terrible if I asked you how your reread was going and you're like, actually, I'm not having a good time. And we're like, well, sorry, you've got to keep rereading it. So no, that makes me feel good, especially because I can already see myself wanting to reread this book in the future, even though I'm coming from the perspective of all of this is brand new to me. I even told you while I was reading these first 3 chapters that when I started the book, I started only on audio. I was doing dishes. I was kind of busy around the house. And I was like, I'm really enjoying this and I don't want to miss anything in preparation for our discussion. So I restarted the book. I was like 12% in and I was like, let's get the ebook out. I'm going to immersion read this, continue to have a great time, even as I already knew what was happening at the beginning of the book. And I feel for Penny as well, because she is motivated. She definitely wants to do a good job. And I think she's just relatable in that you can make mistakes. It happens. And I like the reactions to her mistakes that,
Yes.
they aren't too hard on her. They might be a little bit too lax with certain things. Like when she loses that whole bottle of Flutter, they're like, well, whatever. There's just this thief hanging around who also tried to swindle Weather before, so they know he's a problem. But
Yeah.
I'm interested in, if he pops up again. And even, as you said, the kind of preparation for the second book, not to get too far ahead. But I do think that's interesting, this idea of knowing other department stores, because it has been mentioned in these first couple chapters, the idea of competitors and why certain dream artists, we'll call them, or dream technicians who win awards for creating these glorious dreams, these award-winning dreams, they seem to, at times, some of them only sell to Dallergut Dream Department Store. What's going on with this? Why do they have a good relationship with him? And so I would be interested moving forward, after focusing on this dream department store, if we got to compare and see what's different. Because even in this department store, we also see variety, because on Penny's first day, she's asked to go floor by floor, meet each manager, and each one has its own kind of like style, types of dreams that they sell, and just see where she fits in, like which department, which floor is going to be best for Penny in the long run as well. And it was very fun to see the different types of experiences that she could possibly have, the different types of managers that are all doing the same job but in a very different way. But then Penny coming back saying, not all of them fit just right. Like, this is very much like a Goldilocks situation where she likes, the casualness of one of the managers, but then they kind of have a temper. And then she loves the dreams that are being sold, or she loves the idea of the customers that certain dreams attract, like the one floor that attracts little children and dogs, pets. But the manager immediately gives her the ick. She's like, I do not like this man. His name is Speedo. That's all I need to know. Please go away from me. And so she kind of becomes really distraught. She's like, where am I going to fit? What do I do? And of course, when she returns to Dallergut and Weather, who, I love the name. I love that the manager of the first floor is just called Weather. When she returns to them, she hears them discussing that they have an opening for the first floor, or at least they should be adding some type of staff member because it's too chaotic. And Penny's like, I volunteer. And they're just like, okay, sounds good. She's like, oh, I thought there would be more pushback, but you all are just letting me decide what I want to do. And I think you are right in discussing like Dallergut seeing some things in her, and also just being very relatable. I think 2 or 3 times we have seen the two of them be compared to each other. So maybe he sees a little bit of himself in Penny as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I love the little bits of Dallergut that we get. Their first interaction with the interview is very intriguing, because you kind of get to see what he's interested in. It was a line in her resume that stood out to her where she just said, "Dreams are just dreams." And that line has actually come up a couple of times now in the reading. And so it's funny how something just as simple as that can have multiple meanings. He did not originally like her thoughts at first, when she essentially just said, like, dreams can't change anything. And she changed her tune, obviously, after she considered his change in attitude. But I think the dream department store in general, is going to change her mind. She's already seeing this interaction between Dallergut, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of what we've talked about so far, but in the last chapter, we talk about precognitive dreams, and Dallergut is the one who's in charge of selling them to customers. And she has like these thoughts of, like, he's just running everybody out. Like, we've had 300 customers today that have wanted a precognitive dream, and he's turned them all away. Like, what is the purpose of even being here if we're not going to sell dreams? That's the whole point. And she has a conversation with him about it, because he eventually sells to someone who doesn't want one. And she's like, that was reverse psychology. Why are you selling to people who don't actually want it? And he has a discussion regarding, sometimes you don't know what you want. Like, sometimes you are standing in your own way, essentially. And I think that relates also to Penny. Penny wants to be in the dream department store, but does she know why she wants to be here? So I think he's kind of trying to guide her along the way. He even talks about like, oh, you'll eventually get it because you'll eventually be like to the point. He mentions her running her own store, which I thought was kind of a subtle hint that she didn't pick up on. And then, but he does say, once you've got to the age, you've run this store for 30 years, you'll understand where I'm coming from. So I 100% thinks that he sees himself in her.
He's also just very business savvy in
Yes.
the idea of not losing sight of what's best for the customer, right? Because he's the expert. He should know in the end what would actually work best for certain dreamers. And we don't lose sight of the business though either, because it makes sense business wise not to simply sell out these precognitive dreams because everybody wants them, when in reality they're entering it in the wrong way. They will be disappointed because they also only pay for the dream afterwards with this sense of curiosity, of flutter, of wisdom, or whatever the case is. And so if they're entering this dream expecting big things, winning the lottery, meeting their, future husband in these kind of glimpses of the future, and they don't get that, you will not get the payoff that the dream could potentially give you. So it makes sense that he wouldn't want to give it to people who have too high of expectations, because that's like a higher risk for the business not to get anything in like returns. So my brain was like, oh my gosh, like this is also sentimental and beautiful, but this is also really good business sense. Like it makes sense for not only the dream department store, but also for the artist and why they trust Dallergut to sell it to the right audience. Because even the artist's name, I can't remember, was it, we might have to look up what the artist's name was, because all of the artist names are also very dreamlike and about
Is it
sleep.
Rockaby?
Yeah, like Rockaby something. And I love that. I love that little addition. Rockababy. I think it's Rockababy something, because it's like Rockabye Baby. All right, returning with the accurate name. What was it? I can't even remember what it was.
It's Baby Nap Rockabye.
Baby Nap Rockabye. I think that is so hilarious. And the fact that really this artist's greatest strength is to help people see into the future. If I heard that name, I would almost think it must be more like for infants or for children. So that's also just kind of a cutesy little addition to the story. But yeah, I really respect his business savvy and kind of knowing what works better for which dreamers, and not to simply just sell it for a profit, because the profit may never come. And that also leads us into a different type of narrative style that we do see periodically, but obviously our main character, our main POV is Penny. We follow her as she's learning the ins and outs of this business, but we also get glimpses into the dreamers. Periodically, we switch POVs and we are following these people in the lead up to their dream. So what they may be dealing with. We've got one who is dealing with a crush and she doesn't really know how to process it. And on the other side, the person she's crushing on, he is wondering if he's officially over his ex and ready to enter a new relationship. And then we have someone who's just simply looking for inspiration. She's an artist in her own way. She wants to write a really thought-provoking script, but she doesn't have the right kind of inspiration just yet to have the script in the way that she wants it. And it helps them? A dream, a couple dreams. And it also shows that it doesn't have to be one dream. I think for the script writer, for the screenwriter, she only needed one dream, this precognitive dream to get her going. But then we have the example of sometimes you've got a dream a few nights in a row, maybe a few months in a row, before you're finally ready to maybe like take the next step in whatever you're doing, which is also kind of interesting. One thing that I think that kind of would be great for us to discuss too is the story that ends up kind of cinching our main character's job prospects. She basically is like floundering, as we were saying, and then she ends up really impressing Dallergut by reciting, discussing how often she reads The Time God and The Three Disciples. I really loved the addition of that story, especially that we were able to read it along with her. It wasn't just summarized for us.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that too. I love it when a story can bring in lore. And then I also have enjoyed the fact that this book weaves that throughout these little tiny sub stories that we get. For instance, with the Baby Nap Rockabye, we know that or we think that she might be a descendant of, was it the first descendant or the first disciple who was for the future?
Yes, that's
So,
correct.
for those of you who don't know, because you don't mind spoilers, I guess, so you're just continuing to listen to us, there are three disciples, one who was in charge of the future, one that's in charge of the past, and then one that is in charge of dreams, past, present, and future. And so we learn that Baby Nap Rockabye is the descendant of one of the disciples that was in charge of the future, which is why she has this ability to create dreams that do have that precognitive notion. We also learn that Dallergut is the descendant of the disciple who was in control of dreams. And I love it when a story can create a lore and quote unquote legend that has completely enraptured society and made changes within this world, this fictional world that we have, but also where we see pieces of that lore come to fruition and add to what people do and don't know about the original story. I love that. I think it's so interesting.
I agree. It is definitely one of my favorite parts of this narrative so far. Them always echoing back, always returning to this origin story. And like you said, it's steeped into their reality. The fact that they are supposedly interacting with descendants from these beings who have, these abilities, who can control or at least, be in charge of the past, the future, and like interacted with the time god. That is kind of wild to be like, oh yeah, casual, no worries, let's go on with our day and have our soy lattes. But then also pulling lessons, right? Philosophy, wisdom, to lead them, towards hopefully making the right decisions in the end. So yeah, I love that we have both of those ideas, like folklore in the present, like affecting the present, but also so far in the past that it feels as though you're just getting a proverb and being like, how can I apply this to modern day and help me, make the right decisions? So yeah, I'm clearly having a really great time. I'm really glad that you are game to reread this with me, because as you expected, I'm really loving this narrative. And we probably should, speaking of, lead into what is typically our 3 questions at the end of our episodes. So I'll go ahead and answer them first, since I'm already raring to go. The questions that we typically ask are, what is our current rating? What is our favorite character so far? And then also, what question or prediction might we have for the future? This will be interesting for you to answer, Danny, as far as how you might answer the third one. So feel free to interpret it however you want. For me, this is definitely feeling like at minimum 4-star range. I could totally see it being 5 stars, to be completely honest, because I'm just adoring it so much. So I'll say 4 to 5 stars. And I don't even care what it is, because I already know I'm going to want to reread this because I'm loving it so much. And then for my favorite character so far, I just find Dallergut so fascinating. I really like him as this like wise but very casual character with his calming cookies and just not very good at math. The fact that Weather has to help out with all the logistics, and I really like him. And he's not overbearing. I feel like we don't see him all the time. He's there, when we want to pay attention to him, which is just a very good narrative style. And then as far as a prediction or a question, I'm wondering if we will, obviously, I think this is to be expected, meet a descendant of the second disciple. Because as you mentioned, Danny, we've met a descendant from the third disciple, which was Dallergut himself. And then we've obviously also met a descendant from the first disciple, which was this dream artist of precognitive dreams, Rockababy, Baby Nap Rockabye, if I'll ever get her name right, to this lovely old lady. And so now I'm just wondering, of course, the next step should be the second disciple, the person in charge of the past. I feel like we must meet this person at some point, just because that's how the story has gone, but I could be wrong. Danny, how would you answer these questions? And yeah, especially the third one. How might you answer that one?
I'll start with the first. So my reading is still 5 star. I feel like it hasn't changed. I really have enjoyed being able to kind of dive back in and see some of the things that I didn't remember. One thing I didn't mention that I will just mention here, this has a whole bunch of mentions of food in it, which
Mm,
I
mhm.
recently have talked about. That's something I love in books. And so just little things like that, I've really enjoyed my rereading. I'm not bored whatsoever. There are so many new things about the story or little things that my mind just didn't remember from reading it in the past. So I'm really happy that we're reading this together. I think it's very fun. The second question about my favorite character. Oh, there's so many really good characters in here. I really like I really like Weather. I really like
Mhm.
Dallergut too. I think he's definitely the most intriguing one, out of everybody, especially with his expertise on how to sell dreams and things like that. His opinion on, the different customers that he comes into contact with. Something we didn't mention, we'll have to talk about it in the next episode, is the, pre-ordering of dreams that is something that he allows. So that's very interesting, with him. With Weather, though, I feel like she is kind of the calm in the storm, to play back to her name. She is definitely someone who holds down the fort when Dalligat is busy, and she also is a little erratic at times. When Penny had to go to the bank for her, it was because she was having digestive issues and had to go to the bathroom. She was not shy about being like, "I might be a minute."
She sweats profusely. Like, there are 2 different scenes where Penny's like, she is soaking through her clothing, and I'm like, "Weather, sit down, take a break."
But you also have this person with her, even though she is silly and a little eccentric, that you can tell that she really does have a knack for what she's doing and care about what she's doing. She talks about the books and the financial side of things, but then also I can't remember what it was called, but the scale that they put things on that measures their customers.
The eyelids, like,
Yes,
they're like, th how basically, like, the lower the lid level, the closer they are to sleep, I
yes.
think.
And she talks about, like, different how different ones, like, she's actually helped people go to sleep, but then you don't wanna do that for everybody because they could be doing something that they don't want to sleep, like driving or taking a test or whatever. There was a discussion she ends up having with Penny about a high school boy, and Penny is like, this can't be right. This scale has to be wrong. He's sleepy all day long." And she's like, "Yeah, it's a high school boy. Like, leave him alone. He's fine." And so I really like Weather's character. I like her addition to the story. And then I'll just briefly throw in a psalm as well, which is like the little furry creatures that go around and make sure that people are clothed. I freaking love their characters as well because they kind of seem to be like the people in this society that keep things clean. Because not only do they dress people who show up to this dream world naked, but they also clean up after their messes and things that they leave once they wake up. So I like their characters as well. I know that's more than what you asked for, but I'm giving you a lot. And then I think I'm gonna change the 3rd question for myself because I was
Ooh.
a little worried that if I gave you some questions that I do still have, that I am leading you to understand what we don't get out of the story and what we do, and I don't want to spoil anything for you. Because I have a couple of questions in mind with the sequel coming up, thinking about,
Mm.
but I don't wanna say that because I don't want you to know what we do and don't find out. So instead, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tell you which floor of the Dallergut Department Store that I would want to work on if I was Penny. And you can answer this
Wait, I
question
wanna
too.
answer that too!
So, I think I do think I would have issue with the manager, but I think I would probably choose the 3rd floor. I really like the concept of the pets and the fact that the animals that are coming to this floor want dreams that aren't going to put them in really deep sleeps because it puts them in danger.
Is that the
And,
4th floor, though? Or is that
I think it's the 3rd. Let me see. Yeah, you're correct. So it is the 4th floor, but it's still the one with pets. And I know, like, originally she is a little disappointed by some of the people that she sees on this floor. She sees a dog that is kind of hairless. and she sees some interactions on the floor with people who are looking for dreams and the animals that are looking for dreams that are a little sad. But I do still think that I would prefer that floor, um, because I think I enjoy the kind of quietness of a napping floor as opposed to some of the craziness of the other floors that we're introduced to.
Oh, for sure. And there was some sentimentality on that floor. Like the idea of that kind of hairless dog, though, but the dog was sniffing. I think the dream was playing with an owner or something like that, a past owner. And my heart, I was like, that's so sweet. So, yeah, I do think that it's odd that the manager on that floor is such a weirdo and talks fast and just that doesn't match the vibe of a nap, even though maybe it does, because the idea is that it's ephemeral. And so it's people who are running around all day, and then you're really only having time for 30 minutes. But the old cats and dogs and pets, like I think they need calmness. So I don't really know where Speedo fits in for that. For me, I do think that, and it's such a generic answer, but I do think I gravitate more towards the first floor. And you're supposed to, it makes sense because it's like, but I would love, like you said, I love weather. I would really love to work with her. And I do think that the environment is pretty cool versus I wouldn't want to be with the neurotic second floor. I wouldn't, I think I could vibe with the third floor, but I don't really know why she's angry. Like, I don't know what vendetta she has against the leprechauns, which we really haven't touched upon in this episode. That might be something we can talk about next episode too. And then the fifth floor, her friend from high school, first of all, no, I don't want to interact with people from my past. I don't want to interact with an old high school friend or something like that. And also, they are selling things at a bargain and it seems like swindling. I don't actually feel good about it. So, yeah, I would personally prefer the first floor mainly because, as you said, weather is lovely and I would really like to kind of work with her. And I think I kind of match the way she would be. Like, I think I probably would like to work under her because I would relate to her the most compared to, say, like the dreamy, chill, like pixie dream boss that is Dallergut, and then Penny just doing her best. So yeah, that's really nice. We'll see if we'll have to figure out another, maybe like next episode you can come up with another bonus third episode, like third question. That would be quite fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of the next episode, you guys need to know what to read. So, in the upcoming episode, this coming Friday, we will be reading the next 3 chapters. So that will be chapters 4, 5, and 6. And we hope that you guys will join us. If you haven't started yet, but you just wanted a little bit of a taste test of what this first little section was like, I hope that you enjoyed. If you did read this with us, please leave comments on what you thought of the book. We would love to chat with you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we hope to see you next week.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Not Reading for Content. Be sure to check the description for a schedule of our upcoming reads for this season. And for reminders and other updates, you can follow the podcast on Instagram at Not Reading for Content. Where else can listeners find you, Danny?
I have a booktube and an Instagram. Both can be found at danny.dabbles. What about you?
I have the same platforms. My booktube is at Leandra the TBR0, and my Instagram is at Leandra _ the TBR0. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to tune in next Friday for our next episode.